Richard Fowler in our Democratic political strategist. He's in our D.C. bureau. Welcome, Richard.
Morning, Lauren.
And you'll be facing Carrie Pickett, the staff writer for the Washington Times. Thank you very much. Hi, Carrie.
Hey there.
Hey, happy Halloween to both of you.
Happy Halloween.
Thank you.
Okay, hopefully it won't be too scary for all involved today. Let's talk Herman Cain, because the latest polls show that he is, in fact, a presidential frontrunner out of Iowa. The Des Moines Register puts Cain on top of Mitt Romney, but it's a statistical dead heat. Cain has 23%, Romney has 22%, Ron Paul 12%. Those are the only three in double digits. You've get down to Bachmann, who's 8%. She was once the sweetheart. Perry also once the sweetheart, now 7%. Gingrich 7%. Rick Santorum 5%. Huntsman 1%. Cain, this is probably the biggest upset in his campaign to date. I mean, he's been really the darling, really, of the Tea Party. He's doesn't have a lot of campaign presence in Iowa, yet he is on top. So, Richard, how do you think his campaign should handle this?
Well, I think the broader thing that we can see here is that every GOP campaign seems to have their a little bit of baggage. I think we're calling it the flavor of the week, and maybe Cain his flavor of the week is over. With that being said, there's just no telling about what this means. I mean, I think the jury's still out on the evidence here, what actually happened. Both of these women are both unnamed, so it's really hard to make a generalization of what that will do to his campaign. I think the people that who surround the Cain campaign, or his supporters, more so believe in Cain's 999 plan and his future that he would have, and the economic vigor that he would bring to the economy, or that they think he'd bring to the economy, more so than they are about his personal life.
Yeah, 999 has kind of gotten on the back burner right now because we're talking about some pretty heady topics here. Carrie, how do you think the campaign should handle this?
Well, first of all, the way the campaign should handle it was the way they shouldn't have handled it with Geraldo last night, which was sort of evade the issue when he asked.
Yeah, that wasn't smart.
No.
It sounded like Geraldo kept asking him, just answer the question.
Exactly.
Can you just do that? And that's what they didn't do.
Yeah, I mean, last night was probably not the night for the Cain campaign to really deal with it. They probably just should have said, look, what's the best way to answer specific questions?
Yeah.
And it looked like they didn't really have their act together. As far as the Cain campaign is concerned, what's the very first thing when any candidate runs for any kind of major office? You do Oppo research on yourself. And it seems like the Cain campaign may not have actually have done that. And, if these allegations are true, then we are going to be going through some interesting pieces of, shall we say, stories on Cain. And what will be worse is if other women may actually pop up out of the woodwork. However, the real question here is, why is it that all of a sudden they are popping up now?
Well, that's really the issue, though, Richard. I mean, it just smells bad. Once Herman Cain gets to the top of the polls, all of a sudden the little stuff comes out of the woodwork, and we get these sort of thinly veiled accusations about something that happened back in the 1990s. When Herman Cain was a blip on the polls, we didn't hear anything like that. I mean, does it sound like, and you got to defend your own folks, does it sound like somebody in the Democratic camp decided they were going to find some dirt on Herman Cain and say, okay, this could help us?
I don't think it was a Democratic Party at all. I personally think that it was members of the GOP field who were trying to take him off. He's currently the king of the hill. You always try to knock the king of the hill off until we get to the nomination. But Carrie is right. The Cain campaign has handled this all wrong. I mean, the first thing when you have a crisis, the first thing is to come out and say what your truths are, what we believe to be the truth. And the fact that, his communications director went out and said, or the campaign spokesperson went out and said, this is a drumming up from the other members of the establishment, was not the right answer. The right answer should have been, these are the facts from what we believe is exactly what happened. The fact they're not denying it is almost the worst thing, because it says there's probably some truth to it. So I think the key here for them is to come out on Front Street, address it openly, address it up front, address it so that their supporters can say, he's honest about it, he made a mistake in his life, and now he's moving forward.
The Cain train was moving, chugging along really nicely, and then somebody flipped a switch on this one. Do you think it's too distracting for his campaign now?
Oh, absolutely. Because the problem with this whole issue is that they were up at, say, 23%, like you just showed on that poll. And one of the things I've always been saying about Cain is that when he was at, say, one of the minor pollers, that no one was really looking at him. He wasn't a threat. And then once you start getting up to being a major poller, all of a sudden, that's the real test isn't your debate skills. The real test isn't how high you're polling. It's whether or not you can actually start dealing with all the mudslinging, if you can deal with all the oppo research that's coming from perhaps not just the other campaigns, but also the media as well.
Yeah, one of the things about these accusations is that it was settled back in the 1990s, and part of the deal said that the women. They were two female employees. They were both given 5-figure payouts to leave the association, it was the restaurant association, and to not discuss the case. Now, because we've got a presidential candidate, should all of those legal rules go by the wayside? Should we find out who these women are and find out exactly what happened?
Well, no matter what, we're going to find out who they are, and we probably should, simply because we're talking about an individual who is running for office and who's probably spent a great amount of his own personal wealth on this particular office. And more importantly, very often when legal cases are settled, it doesn't necessarily mean that the corporation or the person who's being accused has actually done anything wrong. It just means that they just want the problem to perhaps go away. Yeah. So, that's something to keep in mind with this Herman Cain case.
And Richard, do you agree with that? Because this certainly raises the legal bar in terms of trying to understand what actually happened here. Because for a lot of these cases, and I'm sure a lot of high-powered executives can attest to this, sometimes you just want to make it go away. They're thinly veiled. It's your word against mine. It's not worth a protracted legal battle in court. So you just make it go away. In 1990, probably he wasn't thinking about a presidential run in 2012. So what do you think? We should just sort of raise this legal bar, throw out the whole precedent for the settlement and say, come forward and tell us what happened?
I think Carrie's right. I think people make settlements, make the issue go away. It's not an admittance of guilt. It's just, I want this to end so I continue doing the business or the work that I'm currently doing. Whether or not that has a judgment on his campaign or not, it's really up to the Cain campaign to communicate that to their supporters, to communicate what the truths are from the Cain campaign or what the truths are from Herman Cain himself. This is what happened, this is what didn't happen, and this is why we settled. If he gives this information out to the people, this will sort of allow the people to understand that, this is what happened. But this brings to a broader issue of this whole idea of what I call, storefront campaigns. Where Carrie said earlier that, they should have been doing opposition research on themselves. And, the reason why this probably didn't happen is because Cain, as well as Newt Gingrich, as well as a number of GOP candidates are in these storefront campaigns where it's not really boots on the ground. It's more so a media-driven, couple of talking points type of campaign, which is not really like the true presidential gritty, we're knocking on doors, we're contacting voters, and more so of we're out in the media and we're doing public appearances. And so I think that's a distinction. That shows a distinction between a true campaign and the campaign that Herman Cain and Newt Gingrich that they're running based on like a Romney campaign or a Barack Obama campaign.
Well, I don't